Hello students, welcome to the PEAK certification course on Economics and Sustainability, brought to you by MPN Systems Advisory Private Limited. Please log on to peakglobal.live where you will have access to reading materials, fireside chats and tests. In today's session, we will be exploring agricultural logistical challenges and innovations. We will be going through an overview of the agrarian crisis, looking at different issues in the logistics sector and market linkages. We will also be looking at various potential solutions to these challenges. To start off, agriculture plays a crucial part not only to meet countries' food demand but also economically. 15.4% of the GDP is contributed solely by the agriculture sector. It employs a whopping 44% of the country's workforce. Small and marginal farmers produce 60% of the total food production. Yet farmers who have small or marginal land ownership struggle to meet their daily livelihood. In order to enhance their livelihood, we need a robust farm-to-fork supply chain, which is essentially the movement of produce from farmland until it reaches the consumer's plate. So what are the key issues in the farm-to-fork supply chain? Firstly, small and marginal farmers have a limited financial capacity to store crops, so they end up selling immediately after harvest. Secondly, since they have marginal land, they produce small quantities resulting in lower economic gains. Thirdly, at the end of the consumer end of the supply chain, we receive little to no information on where crops come from, their freshness, or legitimate organic certificate. Let's look at the specific challenges faced by farmers. In various locations, I have seen that farmers receive a limited electricity supply hours, which reduces their important input to agriculture, water. Electricity is needed to pump this water. Another challenge is a limited access to markets, which in turn hinders farmers from gaining profits. They may not have access to transport facilities to take produce to markets. However, due to the recent regulatory reforms, farmers can now sell directly to consumers, eliminating barriers such as licenses or traders. Another challenge is due to limited storage facilities. Farmers end up selling crops at lower prices due to volatility and distortions in market rates. For example, tomatoes can be brought at rupees 20 to 30 per crate when they are in season, but during off-season, a crate can go up to rupees 200. Wholesale Price Index is basically an index that measures and tracks the changes in the price of goods at a wholesale rate. This chart shows a calculation of monthly WPI for 2005 to 2019 average rates. Two crops shown here, potatoes and onions, show a huge variation in prices throughout the months. The pattern varies seasonally. At certain months where the graph reaches the bottom, farmers receive very low profits and sometimes even loss-making market rates. In order to help farmers reach consumers, market linkages need to be strengthened. An in-depth look at the agriculture supply chain shows inadequate infrastructure such as cold storages, pack houses. As a result, 40% of food is lost at the storage and transportation stages before it even reaches markets. For instance, as shown in this figure, 1 kg of apples have to go through multiple intermediaries to reach to consumers. Farmers have to pay for agents' commissions. Wholesalers bear expenses at his storage facility. Then another sub-wholesaler takes their margin cuts, increasing a whopping 120% between farmer to retailer prices. This also increases food wastage. To quantify this infrastructure gap, let us look at each facility requirement and India's current capacity. If we look at pack houses, which are essentially storage warehouses to pack fruits and vegetables, there are only 249 pack houses currently, but 70,000 are needed to fulfill the requirement that we have. Reefer vehicles, for instance, are are refrigerated trucks to transport fruits and vegetables. Presently, we only have 9,000 reefer vehicles running in India. To transport all the produce effectively, 61,000 reefers are needed. In 2012-13, an average farmer income house per household was rupees 6,426 per month. By providing them such infrastructure, like pack houses, cold storages, we can boost this income. But you must be wondering exactly how. So here are potential solutions that have been tried and tested across India. To help leverage from economies of scale, small and marginal farmers can bring together their harvest to form a cooperative. This enables farmers to negotiate as they have larger volumes. Another solution is community supported agriculture model. Here, there are a set of members in urban areas buying on a subscription basis, paying farmers for what they would demand. Farmer producer organization is another solution where farmers collectively register a company and become shareholders to sell produce together. Let's look at FPOs closely. As I said, FPO is a registered company with farmers as shareholders. Produce aggregation and selling will be handled by the FPO. Farmers pay for a membership fee and gain from profits distributed equally. There is a higher negotiation power here as compared to single farmers, so they achieve higher economies of scale. There are multiple models emerging when implementing FPOs. For example, there are market-facing FPOs as well as crop-specific FPOs like a tomato FPO for instance. An example of an FPO is Sahyadri Farms located in Nashik. It is India's largest FPO organization with 8,000 members. Although it started as a small group, it now exports to many European countries. They have leveraged from infrastructure such as food processing center, cold storage, pack houses to give farmers end-to-end solutions. Their model adopts a crop-specific FPO approach to procure fruits and vegetables. Another solution is community-supported agriculture. This is a model to help farmers reach directly to consumers and build long-term relationships between them. The model works on a membership subscription where firstly consumers pay farmers, then this fund is used for seeds, labor and other inputs to grow food. Consumers are encouraged to work with the farmers on the farms. Finally, fruits and vegetables are delivered to consumers when they are ready. This enables demand management of produce and reduces wastage as only what is needed is grown. Other benefits to the CSA model include localized supply chain, meaning money is circulated within the local economy. Local food means reduction in long distances and hence reduction in emissions. By knowing how much consumer demand there is, farmers can grow what is needed and conserve water, soil, and use less packaging. Consumers benefit from receiving improved food quality and safety. Due to the current COVID situation or any future large-scale disruption of supply chain, such a model can have little negative impact on the agriculture logistics. An example of the CSA model is Gorus, which is a case study located around Pune. A group of farmers started growing vegetables in 2008. By 2011, they had 25 farmers catering to 150 customers. Their customers sent their orders as per season's availability. However, there were challenges including transporting vegetables as they used to sweat. If they had to scale up, investment in reefer vehicles would have reduced these costs and losses. Having looked at the different case studies and models, now it is your time to innovate. You need to create a business plan that improves logistical efficiencies whilst linking farmers to consumers. Remember to focus on enhancing small and marginal farmers' income and livelihood. We will be sharing submission slides to guide you as a template for the business plan. The slides need to cover what challenges you are going to tackle in this plan, what is your solution and how is it going to help those logistical issues we discussed. Propose a business plan through CSA or FPO mechanism. Think about how you will implement the plan and what monitoring and key indicators you're going to use to evaluate the plan. Give recommendations on policies and financial frameworks. Go through the reading list provided on the peak page and work on your business plan. Submit a PowerPoint file with any charts or tables that can support your case, including all references used. We will send you a link where you can upload this file. Good luck and get going. Thank you for joining in.
Welcome everyone to the Fireside Chat. Today we are joined by Ms. Reema Sathe. She is the founder of Happy Roots. She has over 12 years of experience, of which 5 years she spent as a social entrepreneur, working with smallholding farmers, rural women across 5 states in India. Reema is a Presidential Award winner in 2016, recognized for bringing positive economic change for rural women in Maharashtra. Reema also serves as a livelihood and gender expert with the World Bank Group. So first of all, thank you so much, Reema, for joining us here today. Firstly, I'd like to start off asking you about your organization and your experience in the sector.
Sure. First of all, Priyanka, thank you so much for this. I'm very excited to be a part of your peak course. And I hope I can do justice to all your questions. So I'll begin by introducing you to what we at Happy Roots do. So Happy Roots basically is a social enterprise that partners with farm producer organizations and women's self-help groups to create farm to market supply chain with technology intervention. So when we say technology, we are primarily talking about food processing technology, which can extend the shelf life of the farm produce. And we help them on different aspects of the value chain, right from financial access to market access, and also supporting them with technical knowledge. So that's what we do as an organization.
Wow, the work that you do is really inspiring. You must have gone through many challenges in this field. Could you elaborate on some of those?
Right now, if you see agriculture as a whole in India right now, there's almost 40% of our agri produce which is wasted at the moment, which means that it perishes before it actually reaches the market. So of course, there are different interventions that people are discussing about, are innovating about, and one of them being that how our agri supply chain can be strengthened, whether it's in terms of improving our access of logistics, or whether it's in terms of food processing, or whether it's in terms of enhancing the infrastructure, whether it's in terms of our cold storage, whether it's in terms of warehousing infrastructure. So these are some of the aspects which I would say that are some of the aspects which are being talked about and worked upon as far as the challenges, as far as from the logistics point of view are concerned in the agriculture sector are concerned. So I think if we have to pinpoint one thing which is of most criticality right now, is that how do you actually prevent the agri produce from perishing before it actually reaches the market? And if there is a time lag delay which we will be experiencing, how we can extend the shelf life of the agri produce that we have on the farms.
In order to address these challenges, I think market linkages play a crucial role. Let's look at the community supported agriculture model. How effective do you think it is in solving these issues?
So community supported agriculture in its organized form is actually a fairly newer concept in India at the moment. I mean, of course, you would see the more crude format of it when you go to the farms. For example, if I'm a farmer and I have a 5 acre land and I grow some vegetables and fruits on my land, then whenever the harvest comes in, I would possibly go and share it with my friends and family. So this is the most the organic or the informal format of CSA which actually exists in India at the moment. CSA in its organized form is, of course, more popular in American industries, American agriculture industry. But there has been a fair bit of keen interest that, how can we, replicate this in India and how we can implement this in India. I think one thing, I mean, of course, we are all going through a pandemic at this point in time, and it has posed of more challenges for our agriculture ecosystem in India right now. But I think if I have to look at one of the positive things which have come out of these pandemic is that it has also opened up an opportunity in terms of considering direct from farm produce directly reaching the societies in Pune and Mumbai. So I think in light of this, if we have to look at CSA or community supported agriculture, I think it would be easier for entrepreneurs or for farmers to explain or experiment with this concept in partnership with the consumers, especially in urban cities like Pune and Mumbai. So I think though it is a very initial idea right now, I think because of COVID, we have already experienced that there are farmers who are actually bringing in their produce in a truck and tempo and standing right outside our gates, and we directly buy it from them and we book in advance. So some kind of nuts and bolts of it of CSA is actually already happening in current situation. And I think going further, I think there is a tremendous potential that this can actually be formally introduced as a business model, say in our cities in collaboration with farmers.
Absolutely. I think the part where you talked about direct linkages between farmers and consumers is an important solution for the current scenario. Direct linkages can also be made through the farmer producer organization model. Can you talk a little bit more on how we can strengthen FPOs to create these linkages?
So I think farmer producer organizations have like multifold benefits of it, especially, when we are talking about, say, access to credit or access to market, aggregation of produce, and also better rates for inputs or better access for inputs. So whether we are talking about seeds, whether we are talking about fertilizers. So, for example, in one of our farms in Vidarbha, we were trying to experiment with a new crop, which is barley. And, we wanted to procure some seeds for a 5 acre land. Now, when there was a single farmer who actually approached one of the input suppliers, and because this was a new seed, they were not ready to supply, say, 5 kgs or 1 kg of seed to the farmers. Because, for agri input suppliers, everything has to be done in bulk because, that's how the system works. And what then the farmers did was that, through their FPO, which they had established in Akola, they actually aggregated the demand, pulled in some more farmers who were interested in doing the experiment, and placed an order of 50 kg, which is one bag of seed. And in that case, the supplier had no problems. He supplied the 50 kg of bag. It reached the farmers, then they broke the bag and, gave whatever customized quantities all the farmers needed. And that's how the pilot went on and was extremely successful. So I think that's the benefit that the farm producer organizations reap on. So if you are a small and marginal farmer, which is technically 80% of our farming population in the country right now, you have a lot of disadvantages, whether you want to access a loan, whether you want to buy seeds, or whether you want to, aggregate whatever your harvest and make it reach the market. So I think farm producer organization works on a fantastic aggregation model. And there are a lot of, new innovations and technologies that even FPOs in our country are experimenting with. So yeah, I think this is how the FPO model has been very beneficial for the agri ecosystem in the country right now. Of course, it's evolving. There are certain challenges in terms of that, how do we I think access to knowledge is one of the biggest challenges that I see, which the FPOs lack at this point in time. So, for example, because I sit, say, in Mumbai and Pune, I have an access to a lot of information in terms of who are the larger organizations who are buying, which buildings or societies are keen to buy directly from farmers, or whether if I'm not getting my agri input from one place, can I contact somebody else who would be able to help me get an access to those inputs. But I have these knowledge resources with me, and that's why I'm able to exercise those things. But for farmers, because of the proximity of the distance from which they live in the cities, and of course technology and use of mobile phones is penetrating in, but how do we make sure that the knowledge that we have an access to in the cities can actually be disseminated to farmers in rural areas as well? So I think this is one thing which is very interesting even for startups in terms of how technology intervention can bridge this gap. I think this is something that is coming out to be an interesting horizon for FPOs to look at.
I agree with you. The agritech solutions will bridge those gaps in information and logistics, as you said. How do you think the agtech solutions are emerging to specifically cater the sectoral needs?
When we talk about the agri-tech space at this point in time, I think there is so much of innovation which is happening right across the value chain. So I think whether you're talking about the input supply, whether you're talking about credit access, whether you're talking about market access, or whether you're talking about warehousing and logistics solutions, I think in all these four categories which spread across the agri value chain, there are many startups which are coming in and bringing in different kind of solutions. So how are we seeing that right now is how I see it right now is there are two type of innovations, technology innovations which are happening in this space right now. One is product based innovation. So whether it's your biofertilizer or whether it's your new form of tractors coming in, or whether these are smaller water sensors which are coming for small and marginal farmers. So that's the product side of the technology innovation which we are seeing. And the other side of it is the service delivery innovation. So whether we are talking about companies like, say, if you're talking about logistics, we have a company like Logistics Now, which basically is aggregating demand for larger farms and then delivering it to for buyers in cities or any part of the country where they are present in. And in the similar space, we have somebody which is a very young startup from Nashik called Visa to Go, which basically is again aggregating demand from smaller farmers, has a more customized solution for these small and marginal farmers, and is connecting them directly to, say, buyers like Sayadri Farms, who are also based in Nashik, or some other companies like Hindustan Unilever, etc., who are based in, say, Mumbai or other parts of the country. So I think they're very different and very innovative kind of solutions which are coming in the agri-tech space. And like I said, primarily concentrated around one, product innovation, and the service delivery innovation.
It's going to be very intriguing to see the ripple effects of having a broad range of solutions coming in the agtech space. Now let's talk a little bit more about your experiences in enhancing rural livelihoods. Can you elaborate on the crucial role that women play in this sector?
Women, the surprising thing is that when we talk about farmers, and I have experiences before as well, when we talk about farmers, the first image that comes to our mind is actually that of a male farmer. We actually never, when we say farmer, we never think about a woman. And I think that's where we need to start thinking from, because if you look at the farming population, 40 to 45% of farmers are actually women. And if you look at the rural sector, 80% of the women population is actually employed in the agriculture sector by those numbers. So women actually play a huge part in terms of the way our food is being produced and the way our farming is being done. And the interesting finding is that there's a lot of research around it that when you focus on women farmers in terms of getting them better access to resources or introducing them to newer technologies, whether it's in terms of soil, whether it's in terms of water, or whether it's in terms of market access, they are actually more adaptive in terms of understanding or learning this new technology and also implementing them on the ground as well. So there are these lot of innovations which unfortunately actually do not reach women farmers. They reach the male farmers first. So I think that's where I think women play an equal part in terms of our food production ecosystem. And there is also a UNDP finding wherein it says that if and FAO says this as well, that if we actually focus on improving the farm productivity of women farmers, our annual domestic production would actually go up by 20 to 30%, which I think is a huge number in a day and era where we are talking about food security, which could be a possible challenge in years to come. So I think, like I said, that's where we need to start from, that when we talk about farmers, we need to think about men and women equally. And we also need to think that how concentrated efforts can be made so that women have an equal access to technologies, to knowledge, and also to say government policies and schemes which actually would enhance the productivity of their farm.
Can you tell us some of the policies that have been beneficial to the sector?
So, I mean, of course, there's a large gamut of things that we can speak about, but I would just touch upon the things which we as an organization and I as an individual or professional have experienced in the last couple of years. So I think the conversation around amendment of the APMC Act, I think, is going to bring about a huge change. And I think because of the COVID situation, there already has been a kind of a change in the rule wherein the farmers can actually come and directly sell to societies or to consumers, which I think is a huge move and would tremendously help farmers in the way that, because we touched upon CSA at some point in time. So basically, it would help the farmers and their organizations to explore new avenues of making better incomes and getting an access directly to the consumers, and actually removing the middlemen from the entire supply chain who actually eat away majority of the profits from the farmer income. So I think that's going to be a tremendous, it will give a lot of momentum to the entire farm to fork model that various organizations have been working on. The other thing that I want to talk about is the SMART project, which actually launched about, I think it launched in December 2018, which is actually a public-private partnership being promoted by the government of Maharashtra. In partnership with startups and private sector organizations. So I think it's a huge project. It covers about 10,000 villages across Maharashtra, aims at improving the livelihood and the income opportunities for both men and women farmers. So I think these are some of the projects which actually, are going to see very pivotal outcomes in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think we need more of these kind of things to come up as, say, on a project basis or on experiment basis in the state as well. So more public-private sector partnerships, I think, are going to give the industry the momentum which is much needed at this point in time. And also because we talked about women, I think a lot of government schemes and policies, there was a study which was done on the farm wherein, almost 80 to 85% of the women who were surveyed had never accessed the government scheme in their life. So, I mean, these are the women farmers who are actually working on the farm, producing our food, but they have not been able to get an access to the benefits that the government has offered to farming community at large. So how can we bridge that? And of course it's a larger problem wherein we also need to sensitize our government officials who are actually working on the ground, who are actually responsible for delivering these schemes on the ground, that how they can in their communication or in their training programs, have more women come and participate, encourage more women come and participate, and get an access to the benefits that the government is offering and extending to the community.
Great. You have put forward some very important aspects into this conversation and given us insights we might not have considered before when it comes to farmer livelihood research. Thank you so much for having this talk with us today, and thank you so much, students, for joining in.
Thank you. It was lovely being here. Thank you so much.